Once upon an adventure time, in the far distant future, there was a land called Oop. The land was evenly divided between the governing monarchs known as wizards and princesses, though they all served the one true ruler, Wizard Princess. However, Wizard Princess had not been seen outside of her floating fortress that traveled around Oop in nearly 500 years. She was an enigma, a puzzle, a mystery to be solved, until one day a 7-year-old human child named Frankie and their pet sibling owl Jeepers dared to try and find their way onto the FF and find out the truth. Frankie and Jeepers climbed the highest mountain in all the land just as the lowest point of Wizard Princess's floating fortress passed over the mountain's highest peak. And with a great leap of faith and some help from Jeepers' ability to stretch into a giant owl and fly them the rest of the way, the two of them landed triumphantly. At least that's how Frankie would tell it when they were older. Jeepers would tell a much different story. Brushing themselves off, Frankie gazed upon their surroundings in awe as what lay before them was a castle gate, corroded with time. By Jeepers' calculations, a simple push would open the door, but Frankie only heard the word calculations before rushing forward and jump-kicking straight through it. With a heavy sigh, Jeepers followed closely behind. Frankie unsheathed their mighty driftwood blade, as long as their 7-year-old arm, and somersaulted against the wall, launched themselves off a pillar, swung from a rotting chandelier, and rolled along the ground until they were in the exact middle of the fortress's large foyer. 2 crumbling staircases jutted out of the walls and serpentined around the fortress's tall, tower-like center, until they came to a stop mere feet from a strange floating object. "Wizard Princess!" Frankie yelled at the object. "Show yourself!" "Wait, I don't think that's a..." Before Jeepers could finish their warning, Frankie was off and running up the stairs as fast as their 7-year-old legs could carry them. They leapt over broken steps, swung across crevices by hanging vines, and was just about to reach the top of the staircase when it crumbled beneath their feet. Without missing a beat, the yellow owl swooped in and snatched Frankie out of the air, then unceremoniously dropped them onto what they could now see was a floating laboratory. "Alchemaic!" Frankie cried in excited glee. "Seriously?" Jeepers huffed in exasperation. But their exasperation was short-lived when the two of them noticed the floating figure in the middle of the platform. Unlike the fortress around them that seemed to be falling apart more and more, the figure seemed completely untouched by time. Her long green hair flowed out from her as if she was underwater, though her black bangs covered her face. Even her green and black dress seemed to be moving through invisible waves. Orbiting around her were 4 strange objects: a large green hat with a black band, an old leather book with torn-out pages, a pair of green spectacles, and a nondescript wooden broom. "Is that..." Frankie began, taking a step forward, and then another. Before Jeepers realized what they were doing, Frankie reached up and grabbed the person's hand. At the touch, her body went limp, and she collapsed onto the platform, closely followed by the objects. "Oops." The person moaned and slowly pushed herself up. She lifted her head and locked her eyes with Frankie's. "Who? Wait a minute," she groaned and felt around the floor until she found her spectacles. She put them on and looked Frankie up and down, taking in their large blue sweater and plush white wolf hat. Hello?" Frankie's face broke into an excited grin before they threw up their sword and pointed it at the person. "Wizard Princess! What the junk is your deal? Why are you up in this place by yourself?" Wizard Princess cocked an eyebrow, then shook her head and sat back on her heels. "By myself?" She looked around at the broken glass of the tower's dome, the missing bricks, the vines and moss growing everywhere, and then had the strange feeling that she was falling. "Frankie!" Jeepers yelled from suddenly several feet up. Without thinking, Wizard Princess quickly secured her hat to her head, shoved the book into Frankie's hands, then grabbed Frankie and her broom and leapt off of the platform before it smashed into hundreds of pieces on the floor below. Cradled in the Wizard Princess's arms, Frankie stared down below them. Before they could say anything, the entire floor gave way, revealing the land of Oop below them. Soon, the rest of the fortress was falling as well. But instead of falling down, Frankie and WP were falling up. No, they were flying up on WP's broom. They went back up through the tower, past Jeepers, who quickly followed behind them, and straight through the glass ceiling and into the open sky. The floating fortress crumbled beneath them and crashed into the previously unbelievably deep valley. It would later be renamed the Totally Believably Deep Valley at the next annual Leaders of Ooh conference. Sitting on the broom, awestruck by their escape, Frankie, Jeepers, and Wizard Princess all stared down at the land beneath them. "How long was I out?" WP sighed, rubbing her eyes. "Judging by the state of disrepair, you're like 1,000,000 years old," Frankie interrupted. "Ugh," WP sighed again. "Then I'm gonna need like 1,000,000,000 years of lattes." "Lattes?" Frankie hummed and thought. Wait, we should go to the coffee shop kingdom. Coffee shop princess has lots of those." "There's a coffee shop princess now?" WP laughed. "Lead the way. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "I'm Jeepers the Owl. And this is Frankie the Human," Jeepers said, with a bow. "So, are y'all boys or girls?" WP asked. "Gender is dead," Frankie said gleefully. "Right on," WP said with a fist bump. "Let's go to the coffee shop kingdom." Thank you for watching the first episode of my brand new series, Binge-Sona, where I binge an entire series of a show and then I create OCs and a story based on those OCs set in the universe of whatever show I had binged previously. If you can't guess, this episode is brought to you by Adventure Time. I had just completed watching all 10 seasons of Adventure Time, not including the HBO stuff, and I just had an absolute blast creating these characters, coming up with a character. I unfortunately didn't really have a whole lot of time to talk about Coffee Shop Princess, but hopefully she might show up in later videos that I do. Who knows? Anyway, if there's a show that you really want me to create OCs of, let me know in the comments. The next series that I just finished today, actually, is Steven Universe. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye. "Seriously?" Jeepers huffed in exasperation. But their exasperation was short-lived when the two of them noticed the floating figure. There's a